All right, let's get into it. Whenever we hear about some amazing new medical treatment or a life-saving vaccine, we see the headlines, right? But what we don't see is this kind of invisible framework that's holding everything up. It's a set of rules that make sure all the data is trustworthy and, most importantly, that patients are safe. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that very framework. Good clinical laboratory practice, or GCLP for short. In this question, this really gets to the heart of it all. Just think about it for a second. Imagine you or someone you love is part of a clinical trial. The entire thing, the whole future of a new medicine, it all hinges on the analysis of a tiny sample of blood or tissue. So how can you be absolutely 100% certain that the results coming out of that lab are correct, that they haven't been mixed up or contaminated or just plain mishandled? Well, the answer lies in this special alphabet of trust.
So to really get what GCLP is, we first have to meet its parents. Yep, you heard me. It's born from two other major standards that came together to create it. Think of them as the original building blocks for creating medical data that we can all rely on. So on one side, you have good clinical practice, or GCP. This one is like the ethical cornerstone. Its entire world revolves around the human participant. It's all about making sure that every single person in a clinical trial is protected, that their safety is always priority number one, and that the whole thing is done ethically. It's the people first rule.
Then, on the other side, you've got good laboratory practice, or GLP. Now, this standard is laser-focused on just one thing, the data. It's a whole system for making sure that all the lab work is planned out, carried out, and documented so perfectly that the results are completely reliable and you could do it all again and get the same answer. It's all about rock-solid data integrity.
But what happens when a lab is handling samples that came from people in a clinical trial? Well, you need both, right? You need the patient focus and the data integrity. And that, right there, is where GCLP comes in. It's the perfect hybrid. It takes the patient safety rules from GCP and fuses them with the super strict data rules from GLP.
And that's really the magic formula. Patient safety plus data reliability equals total trust. GCLP is the bridge that connects the two worlds. It makes sure that when a lab analyzes a sample from a person, they're treating both the person and the data with the absolute highest level of respect. That's how we get to a place of total trust. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, I think the best way to really understand GCLP is to follow a single biological sample on its incredibly important journey, from the moment it's taken to the moment its data is ready. We can basically break this whole journey down into three main stages. First, you've got the plan, which maps out every single step. Then, the people and the place, who are in charge of its safety and analysis. And finally, the process, which dictates every little action that's taken.
So this entire journey actually begins way before a sample is even collected. Nothing, and I mean nothing, in a GCLP lab is left to chance. Before any work gets started, there's this incredibly detailed map called the analytical plan. You can think of it as the master document, the absolute Bible for the lab's part in the trial.
And when I say detailed, I'm not kidding. Just look at what's in this blueprint. It's got everything, from unique ID codes and the names of every key person, all the way down to the exact scientific methods they're going to use. It even lays out the start and end dates and specifies precisely where every single piece of paper and data file will be stored for years to come. It's all agreed upon and signed before a single test tube is touched.
Okay, so the plan is locked in. Now our sample can start its physical journey, arriving at what's called the trial facility. And listen, this isn't just any old lab. It's a place specifically designed to meet the trial's needs, with secure areas to make sure there are absolutely no mix-ups or contamination. But, a great building is nothing without the right people inside.
And what's so critical here is how GCLP defines who is accountable for what. There's facility management, whose job is to make sure the entire lab lives and breathes GCLP. Then you've got an analytical project manager. They're the single person who is ultimately responsible for that trial's analysis. And then there's the trial staff, the folks on the ground who are trained to record every piece of data accurately right away. Everybody knows their role. And all of this, the plan, the place, the people, it creates this unbroken, documented trail for our sample. It's called the chain of custody, and it is so important.
It's the complete life story of that sample, from the moment it leaves the patient's arm, through secure transport, to being checked in at the lab, to the analyst's workstation, and finally into a secure archive. Every single handover is documented. This means we can trace that sample's entire life at any time, guaranteeing it's the right sample in the right place at the right time. No guesswork.
So our sample is in the right place with the right people. But how do we make sure every single action they take is perfect, consistent, and repeatable? Well, that brings us to our third stage, the process. And it is all governed by the lab's official recipe book, the Standard Operating Procedures, or SOPs.
And this recipe book is unbelievably thorough. It's got step-by-step instructions for absolutely everything. And I don't just mean how to run the test. It's how to turn on and calibrate the equipment, how to properly label a tube, the right temperature to store a sample, the exact way to record data, even how to manage the long-term archives. This is what guarantees quality and consistency, no matter who is doing the work on any given day.
So we've got the plan, the people, and the process all buttoned up. But GCLP adds one more critical layer of protection. It's a system of checks and balances to make sure everything is running exactly as it should. I like to call them the guardians of the data.
Now, there are two levels of this oversight, and this analogy makes it super clear. First, you have quality control, or QC. This happens during the process. It's the lab scientist running a test on a known sample right alongside the trial sample to make sure the machine is working perfectly in that moment. It's the chef tasting the soup as they cook to make sure the seasoning is right. Then you have quality audit, or QA. This is different. This is an independent review of the entire process after it's done. It's someone who had nothing to do with the work coming in and checking all the records to make sure every single GCLP rule was followed. They are the food critic who comes to the restaurant later to make sure the final meal was perfect and that the recipe was followed to the letter.
Okay, we've followed our little sample on its incredibly controlled and documented journey. Now it's time to zoom out. Why does all this painstaking detail matter so much? Not just for scientists, but for all of us.
Well, at its very core, the whole point is trust. And you don't have to take my word for it. The World Health Organization puts it perfectly. The whole reason GCLP exists is to give the public assurance, to give us confidence. Confidence that the people who volunteer for trials are safe and that the results we depend on for our medicines are built on a solid foundation of integrity. And there's another huge worldwide benefit to this. Because GCLP is a globally recognized standard, it means that data that's generated in a lab in one country can be trusted by regulators in a completely different country. And that's a game changer. It means we don't have to repeat crazy expensive and time-consuming trials, which ultimately just speeds up medical progress for everyone everywhere. So when you think about it, the next medical breakthrough, the next cure, the next vaccine, it's all going to be built on data from clinical trials. And while we might never see the labs or the people doing this work, isn't it really reassuring to know that thanks to GCLP, that data is being protected with a level of care and precision that every single patient and every single one of us truly deserves?